All she needed was $40. Just one more bottle of formula for her baby. A desperate message sent to the wrong number. And then something she never expected. A reply. Not silence. Not judgment. But help, real help, from a man she didn't know. He was a tech CEO, powerful and distant, haunted by a loss he never speaks about. He was a single mother, unemployed, standing on the edge of eviction with nothing left to give. Their worlds were never meant to collide, but that one wrong text didn't just reach the right person. It unlocked a secret, one that could take down an empire. And now the woman who had nothing was the one truth that could destroy everything. So now let's begin the story. A story born from a single message and the secret it accidentally revealed. The apartment was nearly silent, filled only with the low hum of the fridge and the gentle static of the baby monitor. Emma Baker sat curled on the edge of her worn-out couch, clutching her cracked phone like it was both a lifeline and a curse. On the screen, a message she had rewritten 5 times glowed, faintly. She had typed a plea to her brother James, asking, again, for $40. She hated asking, but Lily needed formula and payday was still days away. Emma promised she would pay it back, swore it wouldn't happen again, but she knew it probably would. Her thumb trembled as it hovered over the send button. Then, with a breath she didn't realize she was holding, she hit send. Instant regret washed over her like a wave. She leaned back, shoulders sagging, letting her head fall against a faded pillow. She told herself it didn't matter what he thought of her anymore. Pride had no place in the face of hunger. Across the room, the baby monitor crackled softly. 6-month-old Lily had just fallen asleep after finishing a bottle Emma had watered down far more than she should have. The guilt sat heavy on her chest. But there was no formula left, and her bank account showed a cold, unflinching $2.13. Minutes passed. The phone stayed silent. Ban, it buzzed. Her heart jumped. Maybe James had responded. But when she opened the message, her stomach dropped. The reply wasn't from her brother. The stranger simply said that it must have taken courage to send a message like that. Confused, Emma checked the number and realized her mistake. 1 digit off. She had sent her desperate text to a stranger. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment, and she quickly replied, apologizing and asking them to ignore the message. She threw the phone aside and buried her face in her hands. Just one more failure in a long list of them. Even asking for help, she couldn't get right. But then another message came. The stranger responded not with mockery or dismissal, but with a question, asking if her baby was okay. Emma hesitated, unsure what to make of it. The message was unexpected, gentle, and a little too kind. She didn't know what kind of person was on the other end. She'd heard the stories, the ones that warned women like her not to trust too easily. Still, something about the message disarmed her. She replied that they were managing and thanked the stranger for the concern, making it clear she hadn't meant to bother anyone. Yet another message followed. The stranger offered to help. No pressure, they said, no strings attached. Emma scoffed at that. In her experience, there were always strings. She let them know. She didn't take money from people she didn't know. But the response that came next was unexpected. The stranger introduced himself as Alex. He said that he wasn't trying to intrude, only that he had been through difficult times too. Then, with careful curiosity, he asked what kind of formula her daughter needed. Emma stared at the message for a long time. Somehow, this man, this Alex, had remembered her daughter's name. She searched her memory and realized it had been in the original text, but it still startled her to see it repeated. She told him Lily needed a brand called Famille Gentilese, the only one that didn't cause her colic to flare. She added almost automatically that it was expensive. There was a pause. Then came the question that made her heart race. Alex asked for her Venmo. Emma hesitated. Her instincts warned her to be cautious, but the exhaustion in her bones was stronger. What did she really have to lose? If something felt wrong later, she could always block him. She sent her username. Moments later, her phone buzzed. A payment notification appeared. And when she saw the number $400, she froze. It wasn't the 40 she had asked for. It was 10 times that. Emma sat in stunned silence, hands shaking. She typed quickly, telling him it was too much, that she couldn't possibly accept it. Alex's reply was simple. He told her to consider it in advance, something to ease the pressure for the next few months. He said, Lily was worth more than a number in a bank account. And that was when Emma broke. The tears came slowly at first, then all at once. She hadn't cried when she lost her job, not when James moved across the country, not when she skipped meals or rocked Lily to sleep in a freezing apartment. But now, sitting alone in the quiet after midnight, with kindness arriving from the most unlikely source, she cried. She sent a simple thank you, not sure what words could ever be enough. Alex responded by telling her to take care of Lily. Emma smiled through her tears, but as the warmth of the moment began to settle, a small shiver passed through her. She realized something. In her second set of messages, she hadn't mentioned Lily's name again, and she definitely hadn't told him hers. The next morning arrived with the dull gray light of a cloud-covered sky seeping into Emma's apartment. She hadn't slept much. Her body had rested, but her mind had stayed alert, caught in a constant loop of questions. Who was this Alex? Why had he helped her? And how could she trust that any of it was real? Despite everything, there was a formula now, a real formula. Groceries, too. She had gone to the store in the early morning hours before Lily woke, clutching the phone in one hand and a bag of essentials in the other. The moment she mixed a proper bottle and saw her daughter feed peacefully without fuss, something inside Emma cracked open again. Not from fear this time, but relief. It felt almost dangerous to feel safe, even for a moment. By noon, another message came through. It was Alex again checking in. He asked if they'd had a better night. His tone remained calm, patient, never demanding. Emma hesitated to respond, but eventually she replied that Lily had finally slept well. She thanked him again, cautiously, still unsure what would come next. He said he was glad to hear that, then he added something that made her sit up straight. He said he had a proposition for her. Emma's heart beat faster. She told herself this was it. This was where the catch would be revealed. The kindness, the money, the friendly tone. It was all leading somewhere. She braced for the turn. She asked what kind of proposition he meant. Alex responded quickly. It was professional, he said, not personal. He told her he ran a company called Meridian Technologies and that they were in need of someone with accounting skills for a short-term project. Then came the twist that made Emma feel like her world had tilted slightly. He said her brother, James, had mentioned her months ago and spoken highly of her work. For a long moment, Emma didn't know how to respond. The messages had already felt like something out of a dream or a trap. Now this stranger claimed to know her brother? She asked how that was possible. Alex replied carefully. He explained that her phone number was almost identical to James's, who worked in the HR department at Meridian. That morning, Alex had casually mentioned receiving a heartfelt text from someone asking for formula money, and James had immediately realized who it must have been. From there, everything started to fall into place. Emma read the explanation twice. It sounded far-fetched. It sounded too convenient, but it also made a certain kind of sense, and it accounted for the things she couldn't explain, like how Alex had known her name and Lily's. She didn't respond right away. She needed time to think. As she held Lily close and rocked her gently in her arms, she considered the offer. It wasn't like she hadn't been searching. Her resume had been sent out to dozens of companies with barely a single reply. Even temporary work had been impossible to find without childcare or references. She finally responded, telling Alex she might be interested in hearing more, but she needed flexibility. She had Lily, and daycare was a challenge. To her surprise, Alex replied almost instantly. He told her Meridian offered on-site childcare and flexible work hours for parents. Then, without pressure, he invited her to come in the next morning at 10 a.m. He said the receptionist would be expecting her. Emma stared at the message. This time it was her uncertainty that held her back, not suspicion, not fear, but something else. A sense of unreality. Was this real? Was someone like her really being offered a chance like this? She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she also knew she couldn't afford to let fear make the decision for her, so she agreed. The next morning, as she dressed Lily and put on her one professional-looking blazer, thrifted but still decent, Emma felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Nervous hope. When she reached the lobby of Meridian Technologies, the building loomed above her like a tower from another world. Steel, glass, and polish, the kind of place that didn't just symbolize success, it lived it. Inside, the security guard greeted her by name before she even spoke. He smiled, told her Mr. Reed's office was on the top floor, and added that someone named Martha would meet her at the elevator. Emma nodded, stunned by the efficiency of it all. This wasn't how interviews usually went, especially not for temporary accounting gigs. As soon as the guard's word, a poised, elegantly dressed woman in her 50s met her at the elevator. She introduced herself as Martha and led Emma and Lily through quiet hallways to a corner office suite. Instead of a sterile conference room, Emma was shown into a warm, inviting space with floor-to-ceiling windows and plush seating. Books lined one wall. A guitar leaned against a chair. Family photos rested on a sleek, uncluttered desk. Martha offered her water and coffee. Emma accepted the water, whispering thanks as she gently placed Lily's carrier on the leather couch beside her. The baby was asleep, peaceful for once. Emma took a breath and looked around the room. It felt more like someone's home study than the office of a CEO, and in a way that made her even more nervous. A few minutes later, the quiet was broken by the sound of footsteps. Emma turned. Standing in the doorway was a tall man with dark eyes and silver hair. His suit was expensive but worn casually. His sleeves rolled slightly and his tie loosened. There was a quiet strength in the way he held himself, but something in his expression softened the edges. She knew immediately that this was Alec. He stepped inside, gave a small smile, and said she must be Emma. She stood, replying with a quiet greeting, unsure what to say. He waved off the formalities, introduced himself more fully, and thanked her for coming in on such short notice. There was a pause between them. The weight of their unusual introduction hung in the air. Then he spoke again, gently, this time with something more vulnerable in his tone. He told her he didn't usually send money to people he didn't know, and he imagined she didn't usually accept it either. Emma agreed quietly. She admitted she still wasn't entirely sure how to feel about any of it. Alex nodded in understanding. Then he said something that caught her completely off guard. He told her that yesterday had marked the anniversary of his daughter's death. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Alex explained that her name was Charlotte. She would have been 8. He said leukemia took her after a 3-year battle, and when Emma's text came through, someone asking for help for a baby, it felt like a moment he wasn't supposed to ignore. Emma looked down at Lily, still fast asleep. For the first time since their exchange began, she let go of the fear just a little. Alex asked if she wanted to hear more about the job, and Emma, still uncertain, still wary, nodded, because something about this moment felt different. Something about it felt like the beginning of a story that wasn't finished yet. Emma woke early the next morning, long before Lily stirred. Her body moved on instinct as she packed the diaper bag, dressed her daughter, and laid out the only professional outfit she owned, a navy blazer over a white blouse and black slacks, all secondhand but pressed neatly the night before. As she tied her hair into a loose bun, she tried to silence the voice in her head that whispered she didn't belong in a place like Meridian Technologies. By 9:45 a.m., she stood outside the skyscraper's entrance, her breath visible in the cold morning air. The building towered above her like a monument to ambition, gleaming glass, brushed steel, and sharp angles that reflected the sky back in fragmented silver blue. Inside, everything moved with practiced precision. Polished floors, hushed tones, and people in suits that cost more than her rent. But what startled her most was that the security guard greeted her by name. He smiled warmly and told her Mr. Reed was expecting her. Then, almost like clockwork, a woman with composed elegance appeared at the elevator. She introduced herself as Martha and welcomed Emma like an honored guest. They rode to the top floor in silence. When the elevator doors opened, Emma expected to be led to a bland conference room. Instead, Martha guided her through quiet hallways lined with original art to a corner suite with panoramic city views. The office wasn't what she imagined for a CEO. It wasn't cold or sterile. It felt lived in. Bookshelves covered an entire wall, filled with novels and business titles. Framed photos sat neatly on a large wooden desk. Family portraits, candid moments, and in one corner stood a guitar on a stand, slightly worn but clearly used. Martha gestured to a leather seating area and asked if she'd like something to drink. Emma requested water and gently placed Lily's carrier beside her. Her daughter, thankfully, was asleep. Her small hands curled against her chest. While she waited, Emma took in the space. It didn't feel like a place designed to impress. It felt personal. Minutes later, the soft sound of footsteps pulled her gaze toward the doorway. Alex appeared, dressed in a charcoal suit with the top button of his shirt undone. His presence was quiet, commanding, but not imposing. He greeted her by name, his voice calm and low, then stepped forward with a hand extended. Emma stood, shook his hand, and thanked him for the opportunity. He waved it off gently and asked her to sit, telling her he appreciated her coming in on short notice. There was a pause, just long enough for them both to feel the weight of their unusual connection. Then Alex spoke with a note of humility. He said he felt he owed her an explanation, that he wasn't in the habit of sending money to strangers, and he understood it probably felt strange, even inappropriate. Emma replied softly that she wasn't in the habit of accepting it either, that all of this still felt unreal. Alex nodded. Then, without warning, he told her something she hadn't expected. He said the day she sent the message had been the anniversary of his daughter's death. Emma froze. Alex continued, explaining that her name had been Charlotte. She would have turned 8 that day. She had battled leukemia for 3 years, and they'd lost her just before her 5th birthday. When he'd read Emma's message, he'd felt something break open, a sense that maybe this was a chance to help someone the way he couldn't help his own child. Emma didn't know what to say. Her throat tightened. Her instincts, which had been on high alert since this all began to quiet. Alex didn't linger on the grief. Instead, he shifted the conversation gently, telling her about the project that had brought her here. Meridian was preparing for a major merger. They needed clean financials, and there were discrepancies in several internal reports that had raised concerns. He said he'd spoken to James, her brother, just that morning. When the mistaken text came up in passing, James quickly realized it must be her and praised her credentials without hesitation. Georgetown graduate, former lead accountant at a reputable firm, talented, reliable, overqualified for the short-term project, but precisely the kind of person they needed right now. Emma felt herself flush. She hadn't spoken to James in weeks, not really. She had worked so hard to hide just how bad things had gotten, and now here she was sitting across from one of the most powerful men she'd ever met, being told that she was wanted, needed. Alex handed her a folder. Inside were the project details, a 3-month contract, full-time with benefits, competitive pay, flexible hours, and access to Meridian's on-site childcare program. Emma scanned the numbers and felt her breath catch. The salary alone would allow her to pay off debts, cover rent, and build a cushion for the first time since Lily was born. She looked up and asked him cautiously why he hadn't just told her who he was from the beginning, why he hadn't introduced himself the moment she sent that mistaken text. Alex answered that he wasn't sure she would have believed him. He said it would have sounded ridiculous, a CEO offering help to a stranger who'd accidentally messaged him. He added that reaching out like this wasn't exactly normal protocol, that the board would likely raise eyebrows at the way she had been brought in. Then Lily stirred softly in her carrier, her small mouth opening in a familiar hunger cry. Emma instinctively reached down, cradling her baby and fumbling with the diaper bag. Alex rose and gently offered to show her a private break room near his office. It had a kitchenette, he said. Quiet, clean, and more comfortable. Grateful, Emma followed him into the adjoining space and warmed a bottle while Lily settled into her arms. As her daughter fed quietly, Emma leaned against the counter and tried to absorb everything that had happened in the last 48 hours. It didn't feel real, and yet, Lily was fed. She was here, and for the first time in months, the door in front of her wasn't locked. When she returned to the office, Alex was finishing a phone call. His voice was low, firm, something about keeping a promise to his employees and refusing to sell a division. It sounded tense, like the kind of conversation that came with millions of dollars and 1,000 consequences. He ended the call as she entered and offered a tired apology for the interruption. Then, watching her rock Lily gently, he told her she was good with her. Emma replied that she'd had no choice. Lily's father had left when he found out she was pregnant, and since then, it had been just the two of them. Alex's eyes darkened slightly, but his voice remained soft. He told her it was that man's loss. And then they spoke of the job, expectations, deadlines, security. He explained that the project involved sensitive data related to the merger. Trust and discretion would be essential. Before their meeting ended, he told her the daycare had a waiting list, but until a spot opened, she could use a small conference room connected to his private suite. It would give her the space to work and care for Lily in the meantime. Emma was surprised by the offer. She asked if that wasn't unusually accommodating. Alex smiled faintly and said that they needed her skills and that confidentiality mattered. He trusted her. He walked her to the elevator. Just before the doors closed, he added one last thing. The $400, he said, that had been a gift, not an advance. He didn't want it back. Emma stepped into the elevator, holding Lily close. And as the doors slid shut, she felt something shift deep inside her. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't just surviving. She was stepping into something new. Emma began her first week at Meridian with cautious optimism. Each morning, she and Lily would ride the elevator to the top floor, where Martha greeted them with a warm smile and a fresh cup of coffee already waiting. The small conference room next to Alex's office had been transformed into a quiet workspace, complete with a portable crib, a baby playmat, and a rolling desk that overlooked the skyline. It felt surreal, like walking through someone else's life. But Emma kept her head down and focused. The project Alex had given her wasn't routine. Her task was to reconcile internal accounts tied to the upcoming merger. At first glance, the numbers looked clean. Neat columns, balanced sheets. But Emma had spent years training her eyes to spot what others missed. And something wasn't right. By the end of her third day, she began noticing subtle discrepancies, a series of minor adjustments made across unrelated departments, small enough to go unnoticed, but consistent enough to raise questions. A vendor overpaid here, an asset slightly undervalued there. Individually, they meant little. Together, they hinted at a pattern. One afternoon, as Lily napped in her crib and the soft sound of white noise filled the room, Emma sat back in her chair, rubbing her temples. Her monitors glowed with spreadsheets and cross-referenced ledgers. She whispered aloud that the numbers didn't add up. Not entirely. It wasn't until she cross-checked acquisition records from the past 18 months that the full shape of the anomaly began to emerge. The Thompson acquisition, the largest of Meridian's recent deals, contained financial irregularities that weren't just careless. They were deliberate. Someone had been siphoning small amounts of money consistently, methodically, across various company divisions and burying the activity beneath layers of adjusted entries. The trail was faint, but to Emma, it was unmistakable. Later that afternoon, Alex stepped into her office, looking more tired than usual. His tie was loosened, his shirt slightly wrinkled, but when he saw Lily cooing on her playmat, his expression softened. He knelt beside her, greeting her with a quiet warmth that Emma couldn't quite understand. The baby lit up instantly, reaching for him like he was family. Emma told him she had made some progress, then hesitated, unsure how much to share. She mentioned the Thompson acquisition and said something about concerning patterns. Alex's demeanor shifted. He straightened, his eyes sharper now, and asked her to show him. She pulled up the files and walked him through what she'd found, pointing out how the discrepancies were structured, hidden, and connected. Alex studied the data silently, his jaw tightening with every line. Then he asked how much. Emma told him it looked like approximately $3 million had been siphoned over the last 18 months. His response was careful. He asked if she was sure. Emma said that she wouldn't have brought it to him if she wasn't. For a moment, something flickered across Alex's face. Not surprise, but something closer to recognition, maybe even guilt. He told her to prepare a complete report. Then, in a tone quieter than before, he instructed her not to share what she'd found with anyone, not even her brother James. Emma was taken aback. She asked if not even the CFO should see it. Alex's voice became firm. "Especially not the CFO," he said. "Not yet." After he left, Emma sat still, the tension in her shoulders refusing to loosen. She stared at the closed door for several minutes, her mind racing. Why would Alex want to hide this from his own financial team? Why had he responded to her findings not with surprise but with restraint? The seeds of doubt had been planted. That evening, after Lily fell asleep in the portable crib in their now more spacious apartment, Emma returned to her laptop. She couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was unfolding beneath the surface, so she did what she knew best. She followed the numbers. Midnight, she had built a timeline. The financial discrepancies had begun shortly after Vincent Harmon was appointed as Meridian's new CFO. The previous CFO had resigned suddenly, quietly. No public announcement, no official reason. And now, a new question sat at the edge of Emma's mind. Was someone inside Meridian stealing from the company? And if so, had Alex known all along? Emma arrived at work earlier than usual the next morning. The building was still quiet, the hallways hushed as though holding their breath. Lily dozed in her carrier, nestled in pink blankets, as Emma slipped into her office and powered on her laptop. She hadn't slept much. The discoveries she'd made the night before kept her up long after the baby fell asleep. Each document she examined, each name she traced, pulled her deeper into a web she hadn't intended to enter. The numbers didn't lie, and now they pointed to something deliberate, something orchestrated from within. She was just settling in when her phone buzzed. It was an unfamiliar number. Instinctively, her posture stiffened. Something told her this wasn't a marketing call. She answered, keeping her voice calm, professional. The woman on the other end introduced herself briskly. She said she was Detective Russo from the Financial Crimes Division. Her tone wasn't hostile, but it was clinical, detached in a way that made Emma's stomach knot. The detective explained that there was an ongoing investigation into irregularities in Meridian's accounts, and she'd like to ask Emma a few questions. She suggested they meet that afternoon. Emma barely managed to respond. She agreed to the meeting, then hung up and stared blankly at the wall. The moment felt like a trapdoor had opened beneath her feet. She told herself to stay calm, but her thoughts immediately jumped to the files, to Vincent, to Alex. She stood, picked up Lily, and walked straight to Alex's office. The assistant wasn't at her desk, and the door was open just enough for Emma to push it gently. Alex looked up from his desk, startled to see her, but when he saw her expression, he immediately stood. She closed the door behind her and didn't wait for permission to speak. She told him everything, the call from the police, the detective's tone, the mention of an active investigation. She said that Vincent had shown up yesterday, unannounced, asking suspicious questions about her work. Alex's face paled. He didn't try to deny anything. He cursed quietly under his breath, then began pacing the office. When he turned back to her, the guarded look in his eyes was gone. What remained was something raw, something honest. He told her there were things he hadn't shared, things he had planned to explain, just not this soon. Emma felt her pulse quicken. Her arms tightened around Lily. She asked him what he meant. What things? Alex looked her in the eyes and said he needed her to trust him. And then, with a sigh that sounded like surrender, he began to explain. He told her that she hadn't been chosen randomly, that her message, though genuinely a mistake, had landed in front of someone who already knew her name. He said James had mentioned her months ago, back when the financial discrepancies had first started to appear. Meridian had needed someone outside the inner circle, someone who could be trusted but wouldn't attract attention, someone skilled, someone disconnected. And when Emma's accidental message showed up on his phone, he recognized the opportunity. Emma listened in silence, each word cutting deeper. She asked him, voice barely above a whisper, if he had used her, if he had seen her desperation as a convenient piece in his larger plan. Alex didn't try to dodge the truth. He admitted that yes, at first he had taken advantage of the situation, but then he added that everything afterward, the job, the accommodations, the respect for her work, had been real. He said he had grown to trust her, admire her, and care about her. Emma stepped back, shaken. She didn't know whether to believe him or whether that belief even mattered anymore. She asked what would happen now. Alex walked to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a thick file. He said he had been gathering evidence quietly for months, working with a contact at the FBI. Vincent Harmon wasn't just embezzling. He was laundering money through Meridian's international branches, and he had powerful friends. The first attempt to investigate had been shut down before it even started. Alex had realized that the only way to build a case was to use someone who didn't appear to be a threat. Someone like Emma. He apologized again, not for the strategy, but for not telling her sooner. Before Emma could respond, the door opened abruptly. It was Martha. Her usual calm was gone. She looked directly at Alex and said that board security and police officers were downstairs. They had a warrant, and they were saying Alex was under suspicion for financial crimes. And then she hesitated and added that they had specifically named Emma as a possible accomplice. The words hit like a slap. Emma instinctively pulled Lily closer, her body going cold. Alex's expression hardened. He told Martha to take Emma and Lily out now. He instructed her to use the private elevator and to take them to the safe house. Emma turned to him in disbelief. She asked what he was talking about. What safe house? Alex placed both hands on her shoulders. His voice was urgent but steady. He told her this wasn't a drill. Vincent had likely found out what she'd uncovered, and if she stayed, they'd separate her from Lily during questioning. He couldn't risk that. Emma's mind raced. Her body moved on instinct. She gathered Lily's bag while Martha collected her files and laptop. Before she left, she turned to Alex again. Her voice cracked as she asked him what he would do. He told her he would stay and handle the fallout, that he had allies on the board, that this wasn't over yet. Then, quieter, he said that despite how it all started, his feelings for her and for Lily were real. Before she could respond, Martha was ushering her through a hidden door behind the bookshelf into a narrow hallway that led to a service elevator. The doors closed. The office disappeared behind them. And just like that, everything Emma thought she had finally begun to rebuild crumbled beneath her feet. The safe house was located in a quiet neighborhood across town. Modest but secure. By the time they arrived, the apartment had already been stocked. Formula, diapers, baby clothes, groceries. Martha moved through the space like she'd done this before. Emma sat on the couch, rocking Lily, her mind spinning. She asked Martha how all of this had been prepared so quickly. Martha said Alex had been planning for this moment for months, that he always had a contingency plan. Once the pattern of theft became clear, he knew it was only a matter of time before Vincent made his move. Emma asked if finding her had been part of the plan too. Martha paused before answering. She said no, that part was a genuine coincidence. But Alex had recognized an opportunity and had chosen to act on it. Emma didn't know how to feel. She was still trying to decide if she had been rescued or used. Later that night, while Lily slept peacefully in the portable crib beside the couch, Emma stared at the ceiling. Her world had narrowed to 4 walls. A sleeping child and a handful of questions with no clear answers. Alex had taken a risk on her, and now she was the only one who could prove he wasn't the villain they believed him to be. Emma didn't sleep that night. Even with the blinds drawn and the door locked, the walls of the safe house felt too thin. Every creak in the floorboards and every passing car outside made her tense. She spent the dark hours pacing the living room, checking on Lily and rereading the files Martha had salvaged. Her thoughts churned about the police warrant, about Alex's confession, about Vincent's reach inside the company. Near midnight, her phone buzzed. It was a number she didn't recognize. She opened the message cautiously. The sender asked if she was safe. Emma typed a reply, her fingers hesitant. She asked if this was Alex. The response came quickly. He confirmed it was him. He said the police had taken his devices, so he was using a temporary phone. He'd been questioned but not arrested. Not yet. Vincent was playing a careful game, pretending he had just uncovered the embezzlement himself, shifting suspicion toward Alex and Emma before the real story could surface. Emma felt a familiar chill. The man who had stood in her office pretending to make small talk had known exactly what he was doing, and now the consequences were in motion. She asked Alex what would happen next. He told her that the evidence she found was critical. His contact at the FBI had agreed to meet the next morning at 10. He said they needed to move fast before Vincent tightened his grip further. Then came the question she knew was coming. Alex asked if she was willing to be there, to tell the story, to walk them through the evidence herself. Emma looked at Lily, who was still sleeping soundly, completely unaware of the storm brewing outside. She thought about what she had seen in the files, about the lives affected by the theft, about how close she had come to being blamed. She knew the smart thing would be to run, to disappear and protect her daughter. She had enough savings now to start fresh in another city, maybe another country. But if she ran, Vincent would win. She sent a reply. She said she would be there. The next morning, Martha arrived at the safe house with a travel mug of coffee and a warm coat. She offered to stay with Lily. Emma hesitated for only a second before nodding. Something in Martha's eyes made her believe she would protect Lily with her life. Emma met Alex at a nondescript office building downtown. He looked exhausted, his clothes slightly rumpled, his expression drawn. But when he saw her, something in his posture softened. He told her he wasn't sure she would come. She said the same thing. Then, quietly, he thanked her. Inside, they met Agent Keller, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a steady presence. Emma walked her through the files. She explained how the funds had been siphoned, how the entries had been manipulated, and how the trail led directly to a network of shell companies tied to Vincent Harmon. Keller listened intently, asked questions, and took notes. When Emma finished, the agent looked at both of them and said this was exactly what they needed: clear, traceable proof of fraud and laundering. She asked if Vincent would be present at the board meeting that afternoon. Alex said yes. So would the board members who had been quietly shielding him? Keller said that was perfect. She explained the plan. Alex would attend the board meeting as expected. Emma would wait nearby with the FBI team. They would let Vincent make his move, let him formally accuse Alex and present doctored evidence. And the moment he crossed that line, Emma and the agents would step in. Timing would be everything. As they prepared to leave for Meridian, Alex pulled Emma aside. He said if things didn't go as planned, Marta had instructions to take her and Lily out of the country. There was a bank account in Emma's name with enough money to start over. Emma stared at him, stunned. He told her it was just a precaution and that he hoped it wouldn't be necessary. Before they parted ways, he said one more thing. He thanked her for trusting him, for staying, for being the reason the truth might finally come to light. At precisely 3:00 p.m., the board meeting began. Emma waited in a nearby room, watching through a monitor as the board members gathered around a long table in a glass-walled conference room. Vincent stood confidently at the head of the room, papers in hand. His expression was one of calm duty, as though this betrayal pained him. He began by saying he had come across alarming financial inconsistencies. He said he had traced them back to the CEO himself, Alexander Reed, and that, tragically, the CEO appeared to have enlisted an outside accomplice. He said the woman's name was Emma Baker. Emma felt bile rise in her throat hearing her name come out of his mouth, twisted into a lie. On the screen, Alex remained composed. He asked if Vincent had proof. Vincent nodded and began distributing folders to the board. He said the evidence was clear. Financial records, transfers, matching IP logs. He claimed that Emma had been planted to help cover up transactions, that the child had been part of the act to gain sympathy. The audacity stunned Emma. Then Alex gave the signal. Agent Keller opened the door and Emma entered the room, flanked by 2 FBI agents. The board froze. Vincent's face went pale. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then Vincent regained his composure. He addressed her coldly, accusing her of trying to defend a man who had clearly manipulated her. Emma didn't flinch. She laid the real files on the table, one by one. She walked the board through the embezzlement scheme. She explained how the financial anomalies began weeks after Vincent's appointment. She showed the connections between the shell corporations and Vincent's personal financial holdings. Keller and her team backed every word with documentation. Emma concluded by saying that the records Vincent had just presented were falsified and that the manipulation was part of a larger attempt to shift blame and remove Alex Reed from power. Vincent's mask cracked. He stood, accusing them all of setting him up. Then, sensing something shift in the room, his eyes darted toward the door. Keller warned him not to move. But in a flash, he lunged across the table toward Emma, a metallic glint in his hand. Everything happened at once. Alex stepped in front of her. There was shouting, a scuffle, agents moved in, and then Vincent was on the floor, handcuffed, red-faced and furious. Emma dropped to her knees beside Alex. His shirt was stained with blood on the shoulder. He winced, brushing it off as a scratch, but Emma could see it wasn't anything. Still, he gave a faint smile and joked that he might need a new shirt. 3 hours later, after Vincent and 2 board members had been taken into custody after statements were given and wounds treated, Emma sat in Alex's office once more. On her arrival with Lily, who toddled across the floor, holding a stuffed elephant, unaware of the chaos that had just unfolded, Emma asked Alex what would happen now. He told her that Meridian would survive, but the merger would be delayed, and personally, that was up to her. He looked her in the eyes and offered her a permanent role, head of internal audit, reporting directly to the board. Emma stared at him. She asked if he was serious. Alex told her she had seen what others had missed, that Meridian needed someone with her integrity now more than ever. She looked down at Lily and thought about everything that had led them here. And then she nodded. She said yes. The days that followed moved in a strange, quiet rhythm. The frenzy of arrests, press inquiries, and board meetings created a storm outside, but inside, Meridian's top floor, Emma found herself surrounded by calm. It wasn't peace, exactly, more like the hush that comes after something enormous has broken. Her promotion became official within a week. The board had voted unanimously to appoint her as head of internal audit. The title felt surreal when she first saw it printed on her new ID badge, but the responsibilities were clear and she met them with the same precision that had uncovered the scheme in the first place. The conference room that had once been a temporary workspace was now hers permanently. A glass plaque with her name sat modestly on the door, and next to it the portable crib remained in place, though now it sat beside a proper baby-changing table and a shelf filled with toys that Marta had personally arranged. Lily had been officially enrolled in Meridian's daycare, but until her spot became available, no one questioned her presence in the office. In fact, the baby's laughter had become a welcome sound in the corridor outside Emma's door. The staff smiled when they passed by. A few had even left small toys or blankets, pretending they had extras at home. Emma had gone from invisible to essential in the span of a few weeks, but she still moved carefully, aware that respect earned under fire could be fragile. Alex, meanwhile, kept his distance in the days immediately following Vincent's arrest. His injury, though not serious, gave him an excuse to avoid the spotlight. Publicly, he maintained a calm CEO demeanor. Privately, he gave Emma space. It wasn't until the following Friday that they saw each other alone again. He was reviewing reconciliation logs when he knocked lightly on her open door. He asked if she had a minute. She nodded, gesturing to the seat across from her desk. He sat down, slower than usual. His arm was still stiff from the wound, but he looked more rested. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Alex told her that the board was stabilizing. The merger was being renegotiated under new terms, and public trust was returning faster than they had expected. He said all of this with the tone of someone reporting facts. Then, quieter, he told her that everything that had happened, every risk he had taken, had been worth it. Emma didn't respond right away. He told him that she still didn't know how to feel about the way it all started. That part of her still struggled with the fact that she had been chosen, not just for her skills, but because of her circumstances. Alex admitted that he had made mistakes, that he had underestimated what it would mean to involve her so deeply, so personally. But he also said that since Charlotte died, he hadn't believed in second chances. Not until Emma. He said it without looking away. And this time, Emma didn't flinch. She told him that she hadn't believed in him either. They didn't speak of love. Not yet. But something softer passed between them, an understanding. Something earned, not assumed. As the days turned into weeks, Emma settled into her role. She built a small team, established oversight processes, and ensured that every dollar moving through Meridian's books had a name, a reason, and a trail. The silence that had once filled the cracks of the company's infrastructure was now replaced with transparency. She also started laughing again. Small things, like when Lily took her first wobbly steps between Emma's desk and Martha's armchair, or when the baby discovered how to push buttons on the printer, delighting in the chaos it caused. One day, Alex stopped by just to return a toy Lily had dropped in the hallway. He lingered longer than necessary, watching Emma speak with one of her analysts, his expression unreadable. When their eyes met, there was nothing corporate about the look they exchanged. By the second month of her new position, the on-site daycare called. A spot had opened for Lily. Emma stood in the hallway holding the enrollment paperwork for several minutes before walking into Alex's office. He looked up as she entered and asked if everything was okay. She smiled and told him the daycare was ready, and then she hesitated before adding that Lily was also perfectly happy where she was. He smiled back and said that the conference room would always be open to her. And then he added that Lily was welcome in his office too, anytime. They didn't talk about what they were building yet. They didn't define anything, but each conversation lingered longer. Each morning greeting carried a softness, and by the time spring arrived, the cold distance that had once separated them had quietly melted away. 6 months passed. The air had grown warmer, and Meridian Technologies had not only survived the scandal but emerged from it stronger. New checks were in place. The merger, though delayed, had gone through under stricter terms, and investors responded with renewed confidence. But none of that was what lingered in Emma's mind as she adjusted Lily's tiny bow and smoothed the hem of her dress. That evening, the company's annual holiday party filled the entire atrium with soft lights, warm music, and the quiet buzz of celebration. Emma stood near a table by the window, holding a glass of sparkling cider and watching as Lily toddled back and forth between her and Alex, clutching a stuffed animal almost as large as herself. The little girl's laughter echoed through the glass hall, her steps wobbly but full of certainty, as she'd already decided she belonged here. And in many ways she did. Emma had grown into her role as head of internal audit with calm authority. Her team respected her, not just for what she had done, but for how she had done it, with clarity, ethics, and grace. She had become more than the woman who exposed the company's secrets. She had become a part of its future. Alex had returned to the helm of the company with less armor than before. His leadership had become less about control and more about connection. He still carried the weight of past losses, but now there was something softer in the way he moved, the way he listened, especially when Emma spoke. By then, everyone knew about him. There had been no announcement, no dramatic declarations, just a slow unfolding of something inevitable. The way his eyes found hers in meetings, the way she paused ever so briefly when he entered a room. The board had been told in quiet terms. Transparency was Emma's trademark now, in work and in life. That night, as the speeches ended and applause filled the room, Alex walked to her side and gently reached for her hand. He asked if she was ready. Emma nodded. They stepped together onto the small stage at the front of the room, where Alex offered a few closing words about resilience, trust, and what it meant to rebuild both a company and a culture. And then he turned to the crowd and told them that this year's celebration marked not only a professional milestone, but a personal one. He said that the woman beside him had saved more than just a company. She had saved him too. Gasps and laughter spread as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. And though the proposal had already happened weeks before, quietly at home, with Lily asleep in the next room, this public moment was a way of acknowledging what had grown between them in the full light of day. Emma smiled as the room erupted into applause. Later, as the crowd thinned and Lily slept in her arms, Emma stood with Alex on the balcony overlooking the city. The lights below flickered like distant stars, the hum of the party fading behind them. Alex asked if she ever thought about how it all started. Emma laughed softly and said she did more often than she'd like to admit. She told him there were nights she still thought about that moment on the couch, that cracked phone, that message she almost didn't send. She said she still wasn't sure if it had been fate or pure coincidence. And then she looked down at Lily, sleeping soundly now, one hand curled against Emma's chest, and said maybe it didn't matter, because either way the result had been the same. The wrong text had found the right person, and that had made all the difference. That night, in their quiet apartment on the edge of the city, Emma tucked Lily into bed, the nursery painted in soft shades of cream and gold. Alex stood in the doorway watching, his eyes filled with something wordless. Emma whispered to her daughter as she pulled the blanket over her. She told her that life was full of unexpected turns, that sometimes what felt like the worst mistake could be the beginning of everything beautiful. And as she turned off the light, closed the door, and walked back toward the life she had built, one she never could have imagined from a couch with $2.13 in her account, she carried a truth inside her heart that would never change. Sometimes the messages we send in desperation aren't cries for help. They're invitations for destiny.